Welcome our next fireside chat, Wyoming Senator Cynthia Lummis. Hosted by Will Cole, Chief Product Officer, Unchained Capital.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Cynthia. We've been talking about Bitcoin, 2012, 2013, about when we started doing this.
Exactly.
Very privately. This is not going to be quite as private. But where I wanted to start here was kind of at the beginning of our conversation, where I felt like you were really primed to understand the value Bitcoin was bringing into the world because of your time in the Treasurer's office in Wyoming, 2000, 2008. And you've talked to us a lot about that because Wyoming's treasurer job is very unique because of the permanent mineral trust fund, right? Like basically a sovereign wealth fund. Exactly. So what was that like for you?
Well, Wyoming has a permanent mineral trust fund, as Will said, and the source of the corpus is revenue off oil, gas, and coal that is produced in Wyoming. We know that that is a finite resource, and so while we convert it to cash and use some of it to pay the state's bills, we also want to have some of it in a long-term store of value. I got the opportunity when I was state treasurer to take that portfolio from an all fixed income portfolio to a fully diversified asset allocation of stocks and bonds, international and domestic, and private equity and other special assets. So it was just a really fun time to be there. But because before that, when I was practicing law, I practiced in the area of mining law. The concept of mining something that is a store of value resonated with me. It was something I understood. It was something that my whole career brought about a certain familiarity to. So when you described it to me as you mine Bitcoin, it was easy for me to understand. Mm-hmm. So this portfolio we were investing, some of it we wanted to produce income, short-term income, because all of the interest, dividends, and realized capital gains off Wyoming's Permanent Mineral Trust Fund goes into the state's general fund. It is the second largest source of income for the Wyoming General Fund. So then the legislature can spend it on education, roads, prisons, justice system, everything that state governments have to do. So it's an important short-term source of income, but we wanted to make sure that within the spectrum of the fully diversified asset allocation, we had a great store of value, converting value that was stored in the ground as coal, oil, and gas to something that would store value long-term since it was no longer in the ground.
Yeah, and I remember you talking about that, like this concept that this is like this natural marriage of what you're doing in Wyoming. And I'm kind of curious, like, do you think that that's sort of the future of what Wyoming's going to be doing out here, right? Like, is that, you have this scarce resource that you're taking out of the ground, you get one shot to put it into something. Is that something that maybe Wyoming might be looking into someday?
It's possible. As I mentioned, that when Will started describing the concept behind Bitcoin, the things that resonated were that it's a store of value and that it can replace something in the ground for something on the surface. And so Wyoming, as you know, became the first state to put together a full complement of statutes that become the basis for a digital asset economy, specifically Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. And we have the first special purpose depository institution statute in the nation. That then went to our Office of Banking, which created a bank examination manual, very comprehensive, very cutting edge, that can be used to assure the stability of these special purpose depository institutions. Several have been chartered, banks have been chartered under the SBDI statute, and we've made sure that the Federal Reserve has copies of this amazing bank examination manual, but it fell into a black hole. These charters fell into a black hole at the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City, and we've been trying to pry them through that process so they can get the master account, the ABA bank routing numbers, and I still think that there is a fear among multiple federal regulating agencies about digital assets. It's fabulous that the first one that is going there is Bitcoin-centric, because it has all the qualities of a great store of value. It can, in terms of anti-money laundering statutes and Bank Secrecy Act statutes, the things that federal regulators are used to, it has qualities that survive those hurdles. So there's no reason for these bank charters to be held up other than institutional fear. And that's why I'm glad there are conferences like this, because the people who are here can help regulators get through their institutional fear. And I'm trying to do that as a member of the U.S. Senate. When I went to the Senate, my old friend Kirsten Sinema, who is a senator from Arizona, she and I served in the House together, and I asked her if she would form a digital asset caucus, financial innovation caucus with me. And she and I are both on the Senate Banking Committee, and so we formed this. And what we're finding is it's sort of the confluence of senators and their staffs, innovators, the people who are inventing this technology and its various applications, and the regulators. Each of them has a role here. We want to create a regulatory sandbox that has parameters, sideboards, so everybody knows the rules of the road, but that it leaves innovators free to innovate. So we can't be heavy-handed, we can't be turfy, as between, for example, the CFTC and the SEC, but we have to provide that atmosphere, that platform for innovation.
So obviously a lot of this innovation started in Wyoming, right? Your home state, and a lot of the people that worked on that stuff, the Wyoming Blockchain Task Force work in your office now. Like, how important is it to, what's the interplay between the states, right, and the federal government now that you're in? Like, what do you want that relationship to look like between where you are now and what's happening in the legislatures, not just in Wyoming, but here in Texas as well?
Well, I served 14 years in the Wyoming legislature, both in the State House and State Senate. And states are the incubators of innovation from a policy perspective. And so it was reaffirming of that innovative status in our democratic republic that Wyoming's legislature was so forward-looking and innovative in creating the statutory framework. Texas is equally innovative, and hopefully will use our statutes as a bit of a roadmap or a template, and then tailor it to the situation here in Texas. One of the interesting things, of course, about our two states is we're big energy-producing states. Wyoming happens to be the largest energy exporter among the states because we have such a small population that we export more energy than we consume. Texas, on the other hand, being, of course, one of the largest states in the nation, consumes a lot and produces way more than we do. But I think there is also that natural affinity for innovation, for being a little wildcatter, and for recognizing that energy use, energy coming from the ground that is used to, for example, mine Bitcoin, is sort of a natural symbiotic relationship.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't surprise me that Wyoming and Texas are among the leaders in this area.
Yeah, and I imagine you're going to be the Wyoming maximalists here. We have some Texas maximalists here. We might even have some Bitcoin maximalists here. But I like to think that we have a lot of 10th Amendment maximalists here.
Absolutely.
And I'm curious, is there anything in particular, I mean, you went over some of this, but that Texas can kind of learn from what happened in Wyoming? It's a very nimble, state. Y'all meet every year in the legislature. It's every other year here. It might be a little bit slower. What can Texas do to take advantage of what y'all have, sort of paved the way for in Wyoming?
Well, take a look at our statutes. Take a look at our bank examination manual, our regulations, and then tailor them to your situation. You have so many creative minds and innovators and people moving here all the time in this space. So I highly recommend that. And then there is a mechanism, an exchange of information here in Texas that's somewhat similar to Wyoming's blockchain task force. I think ours was more legislative based.
Sure.
Texas is a little more eclectic.
Yeah.
Am I correct?
Yeah, that's basically where we are. Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
it's not a part of the legislature, but yeah, it's very similar to what we were doing up in Wyoming. Yeah.
Well, what's fun about Wyoming and Texas is they're both kind of fearless places.
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily want to wait to let other people test things out before you try them. That's the way Wyoming is as well. Very willing to innovate, try new things. It's sort of what makes Texas, Texas, and Wyoming. And so it surprises me not that there is a attitude here, just as there is in Wyoming, to do this kind of thing. I can tell you that attitude is not shared in Washington, D.C. The regulatory community there is nervous about this. So among the things that we did with our Financial Innovation Caucus is invite staffers to a session specifically on how the FBI views criminal activities in Bitcoin versus U.S. dollars. And they were asked in front of all of these staffers for U.S. senators, would you rather have a crime committed in Bitcoin or in cash? And they're going, oh my gosh, we'd rather have it in Bitcoin. We can retrieve the Bitcoin. And that's counterintuitive to the Washington mentality. As you know, when the pipeline ransom was paid, it was paid in Bitcoin. 85% of that was recovered in the first week. Mm-hmm. Had that been a cash transaction, I'm not sure it would have been recovered that quickly, or maybe even at all.
So let's go back to DC then, because there was an article in the Wall Street Journal recently that President Biden is interested. I have to read this because it's so silly. They're going to propose a creation of a new bank charter for Bitcoin, digital assets, stable coins. What should we be prepared for here? What's going on there?
Well, like you, I'm a little leery because we see, at least I see a lack of enthusiasm for innovation. And I know that Washington likes to control things. And they want to treat all digital assets as if they were fiat-based, fiat-issued, as if they were not decentralized. The whole concept behind Bitcoin, its nature, its decentralized nature, that it's a non-fiat currency, that it has characteristics of a commodity. Little bit foreign to federal regulators, and then you'll see sometimes competition between the Commodity Futures Trading Commission and the Securities Exchange Commission. The one I'm worried about the most, and maybe I'll change my mind in a few months, but I'm more worried about Treasury right now than the SEC or the other alphabet
Trust me, we
soups.
saw that you're more worried about the Treasury.
Yeah, no kidding. I came a little uncorked on poor Secretary Janet Yellen, and it was because of the couple things. First, they came out with this definition of broker during the infrastructure bill that was so overly broad that they wanted to get information from people like Bitcoin miners about who their customers were. Now, as you know, most Bitcoin miners don't know who their customers are, the ultimate customer. And so the definition that was proposed showed a fundamental misunderstanding of Bitcoin and other digital assets, and also showed a desire to claw in as much information from as many sources as they could get. Yeah. Okay, then so we had that discussion. Silver lining behind that discussion, members of the U.S. Senate found each other who are interested in this topic, found some ways to address the problems with that amendment. Our solution didn't pass for reasons completely unrelated to the quality of our compromise language. But we'll get to it. I'm very confident that there's now enough understanding that we'll get back to it. Very bipartisan, by the way. I worked with members of both parties who I didn't know had any interest in Bitcoin or digital assets, and now we know each other, and now we talk regularly about this. Friendships formed over that in the U.S. Senate, surprising friendships. So then here they come with this proposed new regulation for banks and credit unions, accounts that have more than $600 that they want, the aggregate inflows and outflows of those accounts, all accounts. And that will require banks and credit unions to have all new software or hire outside consultants to gather that information on us. To what end? To what end? So I've heard more about this issue in Wyoming from my constituents than any other issue in the last 3 months. So I did come a little uncorked, and I do think that there will be some changes to that language, but it's beginning to show a pattern in my mind by the Treasury Department, the IRS, that we're really going to have to work on keeping the heavy hand of government at bay. They want more and more of our information.
I mean, it's a shame too. I mean, we have the SPDIs in Wyoming, Bitcoin businesses moving to Wyoming, Texas here taking advantage of the decentralized or deregulated energy grid here. I mean, they're just going to go to a jurisdiction that is friendly to this.
What I worry about is to the extent that those friendly jurisdictions are non-U.S. jurisdictions, we know that are those out there that would welcome with open arms the innovators that have chosen Texas and Wyoming as their current homes. So we're up for a challenge in the U.S. Senate in dealing with the regulators on this subject. And it helps to have a dialogue. And I try to go out of my way to have a dialogue with the regulatory agencies. So we're sharing information. And I try to, like a broken record, say we want a regulatory sandbox that has sidewalls, that has understandable parameters, but allows the innovators to continue to innovate. And I say that over and over to all the regulators I talk to, and I talk to them frequently. And because as they develop their regulations, as the Biden administration, as you read, is looking at creating institutions, we want to make sure that that is the goal.
Yeah.
That's the goal. And to the extent that any regulator or the Congress gets out of that sandbox, we want to pull them back in so innovation can continue to occur. And let me take advantage of the fact that I'm in front of an audience of innovators. Help us, help the U.S. Senate, help your senators, help regulators you know. We're hungry to do this right. We have to get this right. Being the lead financial nation in the world really is a privilege. Any other nation can take it over from us if we mess it up.
Speaking of getting this right, given your long history as an opponent to the blank check spending that's going on, to the credit expansion, I'm guessing you're a huge fan of trillion-dollar coins.
I will give you $6 trillion coins.
Oh,
Will.
thank you.
And if you give me 6 egg rolls, I'll say that's a fair trade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering what they could possibly. I'm wondering what they could possibly make this out of to make it worth $1 trillion. Like, I was thinking maybe they could, make 21 million coins, make it in this sort of decentralized manner. Maybe they wouldn't have total control over it, and give it out to people to spend energy in order to mine those coins over time. Maybe that would work.
I think you're onto something.
Well, thank you, Cynthia. Thank you for joining us here in Texas, and hope you'll stay for a little bit. I'm hoping also we have your daughter and I have plans tonight, and if you could babysit.
I flew all the way from Washington, D.C. to accept that offer.
Thank you.